It's time to put on makeup. It's time to dress up right. It's time to raise the curtain on the Muppet Show tonight.
Why do we always come here?
I guess we'll never know.
It's like a kind of torture
To have to watch the show.
But now let's get me started. Why don't you get me started?
It's time to get things started on the most
Sensational, inspirational, celebrational, motivational. This is what we call the Muppet Show.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hey kids, welcome to Grumpy Nostalgia, the Second Look Cinema podcast, the show where we go back to that blockbuster new release wall of our memory. We grab a copy off the shelf, we pop in our VCR, and we see what time has done to it. I'm Justin, that's Mike.
Still Mike, but a different Mike.
And together we're here to help you navigate all the landmines littered down memory lane. So you are hearing things correctly. Our good friend Mike is no longer with the podcast. No, I'm just kidding. He had to take a day off. He's got some personal commitments. He's an artist. He's focused on some local art shows. 'Tis the season. So we were kind of stuck, but we realized that we have a super big fan base, and we had a very dedicated fan decide to sit in. Super sub, if you will. Got a different mic. This is Dr. K.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. This will be a lot of fun, and hopefully I can fill in for Mike and maybe bring some things to light that he wouldn't actually like.
Well, that's a great point, because this is probably a movie that Mike would frown upon.
Oh,
and
I'm
we'd
sure.
probably never get a chance to. So I appreciate you, Ceddy, coming in last minute and filling in for us. So everybody, welcome everybody's favorite veterinarian, Dr. K, to the show. And let's get started.
Who the heck are you? Don't tell him what you want. He's a liar. You disgust me. How can you live with yourself? You sit on a throne of lies. You stink. You smell like beef and cheese. You don't smell like Santa.
So we're going to talk about a movie that's, I think, is more relevant now than ever. We're going to talk about The Dark Crystal from 1982. This is interesting for a lot of reasons. One, it's one of those cult movies that kind of indicative of the show. We find these weird movies that maybe weren't appreciated in their time, and then we kind of go back and watch them again and say, well, this was crazy. So I really appreciate this was Dr. K's suggestion. Okay, what kind of made this one come to the forefront when we talked about a movie to talk about?
So Netflix probably played a role in this because they had that series recently based on like a Dark Crystal prequel. And it was just so good. My wife loves the Dark Crystal. I did. And it was just really cool to watch. And then to think about it, just listening to your show, and I'm like, oh, maybe I'll get to be on again. Maybe I'll get to do a movie.
Yeah.
And I know I've sent you texts and said, oh, yeah, let's do this one. And then I'll go watch it. And I'll be like, oh, that sucks. I don't want to sit through and have to deal with that again. So I'll leave that to you guys. But Dark Crystal's just a visual masterpiece. And for the time period, it's amazing. So that's how that came about.
So let's kind of work on that. Let's by jumping in here. So this was directed by Jim Henson and Frank Oz. Together have put together about 48 awards total. It's been 32 years since we lost Jim Henson. I did not realize that amount of time had passed. That's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. But he's, of course, famous for the Muppets and Sesame Street. And a lot of people don't realize he was on the first episode of Saturday Night Live, actually.
Oh, did not know that.
Yeah. He was threatened with getting his segment bumped for the longest time, but he actually got on there. Frank Oz, of course, has done everything. He was the voice of Yoda, of course, and he's been a very prolific film director, done a lot of great films. These two guys met in college in 1961. They're both 19 years old and collaborated on a lot of famous things. It was also written by these two as well, and also included a guy named David Odell, who was a Muppet Show writer. And he also wrote Masters of the Universe. Okay. So there you go. One step forward, two steps back, which I hear is getting remade.
Next year, I think.
Yeah.
Next year. And as a matter of fact, it's funny you saying that. I just saw 2026, they're going to have Henry Cavill in Voltron. So another childhood
Well, they're just a plethora of things they can rape and pillage from our developmental years, right? This had a budget of $15 million, which in modern terms seems kind of like a bargain, given the amount of technical work they had to do here. And it was released on December 17th for the Christmas season in 1982. very, very long time ago.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So this was a difficult thing to talk about in terms of cast because this is one of the first, well, I think the first movie ever, non-animated, that didn't involve any human characters. But you had some performers and you had some voice talents. So Dr. K, why don't you try to walk us through the best you can the cast members that helped bring this oddly crafted movie to life?
Okay, so as you've already mentioned, Frank Oz, he certainly did voices throughout, and one of the major characters in here was Agra.
You dare try to control Ogra! Ogra can barely control Ogra!
Which is like this witch-like creature. But what's interesting is even though he did that character, he and Jim Henson felt that their voices were too recognizable. So they were actually, all their lines were reread by two other voice actors. So the voice actor that did this for him was Billy Whitelaw.
That's familiar.
And yeah, so, and I didn't dig too far into the other voice actors because they did some random things, but a lot of stuff they were doing wasn't voice acting. They were in Broadway shows and things of that nature.
Yeah.
But what's interesting, I thought you would find, was that Agra has a lot of mannerisms similar to Yoda. And so it's like, well, who came first? Because these movies came out pretty darn close. Well, Yoda was actually developed pre-Agra. I think maybe 78. It was pretty shortly after the first Star Wars came out. And then Yoda came in Empire Strikes Back in 1980. Agra was, in development through obviously 1982.
Yeah. Very creepy character. She reminded me of one of the witches in Clash of the Titans. Got an amalgamation of all three of those. But
right.
Another movie kind of inspired by this film.
Yeah, so she was there. And then one of the other major characters is this character called a Gelfling that Jim Henson did the voice for. That was Jen. But it turns out that Stephen, I think Garlic, maybe if I have that right, ended up doing that voice. Once again, for the same reason of recognizability. And then there's a bunch of different voices in here, that follow. But my favorite one is Chamberlain, which is the one, yes, and whimpering all the way through. Yeah. My equivalent of Starscream.
Hardly annoying.
Yeah, and that was, I believe, a Barry Dennis who did that.
Yeah,
and so. Once again, these voices, a lot of people were doing stage work and such, and then they ended up being able to do these voices as well. So pretty fascinating. But those would be the major voice actors throughout this film.
Yeah, I like you brought up the actor Barry Dennis. You might remember him as the ignored office assistant in The Shining. Right. Yeah. He was the guy that was supposed to help Jack move in, and he just had a few lines, and he always looks kind of aggravated to be there. He was also he played Pontius Pilate in the film version of Jesus Christ Superstar, for those that are keeping score at home.
I wash my hands of your demolition! Die if you want to! You innocent puppet!
I'm just a weird kind of actor, but there you go. So speaking of weird, let's talk about some of the things about this movie. So Henson has described this as being scary on purpose. He was associated with the Muppets and Sesame Street, and he felt that it was time for him to kind of shift gears, and he wanted this to be a dark tale. The studio kind of fought him on that. We'll kind of get into more of that later, but he wanted this to be dark and disturbing because he wanted kids to kind of deal with this kind of subject matter in a different way. And it wouldn't have come about except that he was stranded in New York airport during a blizzard.
Right.
He and his daughter were sitting in the tarmac, was waiting to take off, and a significant delay in flights made him just start breaking out notes. And his daughter, Catherine, described this event as something possessed him and took over, where he just started writing furiously. He ultimately just crafted the entire timeline of the film in JFK, which is kind of cool. In the early version of the script, there was a deleted scene where it included a vast act that took place in the underworld of this planet. It was ultimately deleted, but that concept kind of translated into his new series, which became Fraggle Rock. So So he kind of used that concept and tied that over to his show, that groundbreaking show on HBO in the early years. This was the first ever live action film not to feature a human actor. I think the only exception would be some of the long shots of Jen and the other Gelflings kind of running. They didn't have the technology to the puppetry to do that. But other than that, there are no human beings in this film, which is cool. The previews for this was a complete disaster. There's a couple reasons. One, the Skeksis, the villains in the film, Henson wanted to originally keep their original language. He didn't want to have an English version, so he subtitled all their dialogue. And audiences in '82 weren't ready for that, so they poo-pooed that idea.
Is poo-poo one word or two?
The studio fought him hard on that. He made a concession, but they also started pushing for some other changes to try to change the tone of the film, and he wouldn't have it. So he ended up buying the film rights back from the studio. Took a huge financial risk to buy this back so he could distribute his vision as he saw it. So that was a big risk. His vision was not welcomed by all cultures. Of course, this movie has been banned in most Muslim and Islam countries for the nature of its religious outtake, and it's been banned as demonic in some cases. So this movie relied heavily, of course, during the time for practical effects. There's no CGI because CGI wasn't a thing. The sea was barely a thing at that point. So just a groundbreaking achievement in practical effects. It took over 9 tons of rubber to make all these costumes, which is an amazing amount of theatrics there. The puppetry, all these characters involved an actor inside performing. It's been told on several occasions that the puppetry in this film was actually torture. They could really only shoot, I think, 10, 15 seconds at a time, literally before the actors in the performers inside the suits it collapsed, the heat, and I think they actually had like monitors in the inside of their costumes. They could see where they were going. But I mean, some of these characters, 7-8 foot tall.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, it's mind-boggling just looking at one costume, just one. Like if you think of newer movies like Jim Carrey and The Grinch, not that I love that or anything, but just the time and effort, to put him in that suit for that thing. Yeah. And you're talking so many different creatures in different environments. It's visually, like every few minutes, it's ridiculous. And getting to watch it again, when you're older and looking at it again, it's like, oh, I missed that. So it's great.
I should have appreciated that more the first time I saw it, but I guess we'll kind of get to that when we talk about our first viewings of the film. So our first viewings would have been in 1982, and we want to talk about that year a little bit. So in theaters before this movie came out in December, of course, he had Sophie's Choice on the other end of the spectrum. He had Airplane 2. He also had 48 Hours and Gandhi. Gandhi ended up winning Best Picture for that year. This movie came out on the 17th, as we talked about, along with Tootsie. So Tootsie was a box office behemoth, the biggest holiday film that year, of course. Speaking of bigger films, so 82, I mean, this can go down in the annals of film as probably one of the greatest years ever. Just take a look at this Murderer's Row on the top of the box office. You had E.T., Raiders of the Lost Ark, Rocky 3, Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan, and Poltergeist, just to name a few. I mean, then you throw in these at the end of the year, and, I think modern Hollywood would really be appreciative of a box office performance of that year alone. But, wow. Just what a profile of films,
Oh, fabulous! Wrath of Khan was just awesome.
That is doomed to be covered on this show. I think we're hoping to get that in season 6. So all you Star Trek fans, Trekkers, as you like to be called, stay tuned. We're going to get to that when we promise. Dark Crystal ended up doing not too bad. This film was often misconstrued as a flop. But if you look back, it was number 16 for the year. And when you look at the films we just mentioned, I mean, of course, it's just a niche film, I think. To have that kind of box office for that against that kind of blockbuster competition is pretty healthy. This is kind of a Mandela effect when you go back and you see these films like that wasn't a very big hit, but when you look back at the time, adjusted for inflation, people used to go to movies. What can you say? But we'll get to that more later when we talk about awards and accolades. So other things going on in 1982. Okay, big hit on the radio. You had Dirty Laundry by Don Henley. That was the number 1 song the week this came out. Number 2 song was Rock This Town by the Stray Cats, which is still just as good as ever. On the corny side, you had Up Where We Belong by Joe Cocker and Jennifer Warrens. This, of course, was facilitated by the tie-in to the movie that year. Also another big movie, An Officer and a Gentleman. We're all singing that song. You had Laura Branigan singing the song Gloria, which is kind of unanimous with her stardom, but this was not her song, okay? This was a cover. It's amazing the amount of songs that we all kind of associate with an artist that were all actually covers. I watched a YouTube video the other day about songs that were originally made famous by a previous artist, and it was a 2-hour video, and you would be amazed at the amount of songs from like The Twist by Chubby Checker, and it's amazing how many songs have been ripped off over the course of all the years.
Oh, mind-boggling. Any major artist you'd listen to sometimes that bent or mixed genres or whatever, you tend to find now later that, they kind of lifted that from the guy across the street.
Yeah, not their song.
Yeah.
Just wrapping up the music scene, you had Rock the Casbah by The Clash and Man-Eater by Hall & Oates. So that's what we were listening to. Kind of a wide spectrum on the top 40, if you think about it. Not so much now. Some other things going on in 1982, that you might find interesting. This was the year that Details magazine premiered. I think every Gen X guy read Details in college. I did. It had a good run for a magazine. It went all the way to 2015 before those things kind of just faded out. I don't know if it has an online presence or not. It's generally the way these things went. They stopped printing and just went to digital media. Sad, though. I kind of miss getting a magazine in the mail every now and then,
So 82 should have been my transition from 8th grade to high school, if I remember correctly. And I would say in that time period, I was probably still listening to The Who a bunch.
Yep.
And of course, was still listening to records and those kind of things. So
yeah,
it's funny because, Mike being on here, Mr. James, his recall is absurd for what he remembers.
It's like savant level, but only for a generic period, like from like 65 to like 82. He knows everything.
Oh yeah, so like I knew right off I wasn't going to compete with that, but I remember all of those things, and just what a crazy year. And I was playing Dungeons and Dragons and everything else, so it was a good period to be in.
There's no shame in that. I did the same thing. Other things going on in 1982. This was the year that Space Invaders passed $2 billion in revenue. That's a lot of quarters, man. Still a great game. Still holds up to this day. This is the year. I'm a nerd, science nerd, so I think, as are you, and I think we can both appreciate this. This is the year on the far side where Gary Larson featured the Thagomizer. For those that aren't aware, this is the Stegosaurus end of his tail with all the spikes. He is named after the late great Thag Simmons, who was murdered by one of these, indicated in the cartoon panel. What I like best about this story is the actual paleontologist named the skeletal remains of the Stegosaurus' tail. They actually named it the Thagomizer in honor of that cartoon. So there you go. Nerds stick together. This is also the year that Ozzy peed on the Alamo in Sharon's dress. So as a result of that, he was banned for 10 years and never asked really to come back. So God bless Ozzy. Speaking of Ozzy, tragically, this is the year his guitarist Randy Rhoads died in an airplane crash. That was sad. This was released during the Christmas season, of course, and the biggest gifts for that year for Christmas were Trivial Pursuit, the ColecoVision game system, as well as the Vectrex. Remember the Vectrex?
No. What is that?
The Vectrex was an interesting thing. It was its own little monitor. It was like a stand-up arcade game, and it had little cartridges that you could play, and it had its own little arcade-style adapter. It was about a 2-foot tall little black and white television screen. I had one, and I loved it. I gave it away, and I wish I would have never done it. It had a profile about 12, 14 games. It wasn't very successful, but you had like a little colored insert you would swipe over the screen to put your games in color. But it had arcade quality games like Asteroids and all that were just fantastic, and I miss that a lot. So there you go. We were also riding our BMXs. That was a big seller that year, BMX bikes, when kids used to go outside and do things. Now you have a BMX by EA that they play inside on their Xbox, and there you go. Smurfs merchandise was big that year, of course, as was Strawberry Shortcake. So there you go. That's what we were doing in 1982.
Those were all scented, I think. I didn't have them, but I'm pretty sure the girls around me did.
I could smell a strawberry Shortcake doll if you blindfolded. There's something unique about that smell. My sisters had them. They're still out there to some degree, but again, not quite the same. So let's kind of jump into the film here. So this was 1982. This is the groundbreaking film on several levels. There wasn't really anything like this then, and there really hasn't been anything like that now. Let's kind of talk about how this film kind of entered theaters, its effect, and we can't do that until we talk about the film. So, Dr. K, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, if you would please take over Mike's job and hit the button.
Boom.
All right, so we kind of start out with a little prologue where we get a explanation of the world we're living in, and there's a civilization called the Yerskeks, which were these sentient beings that rule this planet Thra. It's got 3 suns, and they're kind of the indigenous people there. And unfortunately, they cracked this thing called the Crystal of Truth, and this splits the Yerskeks into 2 different races. One, the vile Skeksis, which are evil and villainous, and one is the mystics. They kind of split off into these 2 different tiers of people. The mystics are more kind of the reserved and the sage and the more patient group, kind of like Sith and Jedi for those that are playing at home.
Fair enough, yeah. And
it's created this world where the Skeksis have taken over. They pushed out the mystics, and they kind of rule with this evil hand. You get this connection with nature, and you get this connection with the duality of people, and it kind of symbolizes, splitting this perfect being into 2 different sides, the duality of that. And so these Skeksis have become the rulers of the planet. Their emperor is dying, and one of the evil Skeksis named the Chamberlain he's trying to take over and usurp that. The creature design here is beyond the chart. It's just crazy original and detailed. This was actually, I don't want to go too much farther, but recognize the guy named Brian Fraud. He's the designer and the concept artist for all these creatures in this film, and is really kind of his work that they applied here. But anybody who's ever seen this film, these images and the concept art is taken right out of his original drawing. So just a fantastic amount of work there. Okay, I don't know if you noticed this, but what really sold these practical effects were the eyes.
I could see the eyes, and just the layers. These creatures were wearing clothes, and in some cases, the Chamberlain's clothes were ripped off, and there was a creature underneath. I mean, it's very immersively believable in a very short period of time. Yeah,
you realize they're puppets for about 4 or 5 seconds, and then you kind of just drift into this is a character in a film, and I think it's just a testament to the quality of the filmmaking here. We mentioned those eyes. Henson was very adamant that he wanted all these eyes to appear realistic, so every eye of every creature was handcrafted out of glass.
Oh, wow.
And the blinking and the articulation of those was all done by remote control. They wanted to make sure that like E.T. before him and all that, all these characters, their soul comes from their eyes. He wanted to make sure that came through on the screen, and of course he succeeded. So now we get a cutaway to the Mystic civilization, and this is where we get introduced to Jen, who's a creature called a Gelfling, kind of a elven type creature, small little thing that he's been training under this Mystic master. And this master on his deathbed, not unlike Yoda in the Return of the Jedi, declares to Jen that there's this prophecy that someone will come along to replace the crystal shard that was broken and from the crystal of truth. And there's a prophecy that someone will find this crystal shard and reunite it with the dark crystal and put the world right again. And he feels that Jen is this guy, and he sends him out on a mission. He tells him that this character named Aughra is the one who has the shard, so he sends him out on this journey. So Aughra is this weird Yoda-like lady version who lives in the outback, and just an amazing creature design here, Kay, that you kind of articulated earlier. But he meets up with her. She kind of proves his worth he has to determine which shard is actually the one. So he has a little flute that he plays, and the resonance of his flute makes the real shard start to glow, kind of enforcing the prophecy version of the story. He decides he's got to take this shard back to the castle and mend the dark crystal to put the world right. So he goes off on his journey. So as he takes off, the mystics also hear the call that something's happening, and the dark crystal is going to be, so they make their journey back to the castle as well. And we got ourselves a movie here. So as Jen is doing his quest, he comes across, some dangers, of course, in the world of Thrar. He meets up with a little creature called Fizzgig, which is a little fur ball that's kind of a little mini Chewbacca, if you will, a fun-sized Chewbacca. I think this is voiced by Frank Oz, right, Kay?
I think he did his gig. I
Yeah.
don't have my list in front of me now, but I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that's the case.
He also comes across Kira, which is another a female Gelfling. Looks kind of just like him, but with worse bangs. And what's interesting here, I was doing some research, Kay, and then the original design for these Gelfling were they were supposed to be large blue, bright blue characters, like the Navi and Avatar. It's kind of crazy.
Oh yeah, okay.
But the producers felt the look was too obtrusive and stood out too much. Didn't really match the thematic tones and hues of the rest of the movie. So they kind of softened their features and made them a little more human-like, just to kind of sell the narrative a little bit more. So there you go. They're attacked by these things called Garthins, which I thought was really, really cool. These like giant bugs that the Skeksis had released to attack them.
They look like big scarabs.
Yeah,
It made me think of the Mummy in some
Right.
sense, but yeah.
For those that aren't aware, the Mummy is close to being the next version is coming out, right? I think I got a text from Dr. K just this week saying
So
that Brendan
rumor
Fraser's
is,
ready to go again, right?
yeah, he wants to go again, and apparently Rachel Weisz is willing to come back. And I mean, if there's a story, I'm all for the closure of it. It sounds great.
The world needs another Mummy movie right now, that's for sure.
A
So
good one. They got
Yeah.
makeup for Tom Cruise's whatever that was.
whatever that was, exactly.
Yeah.
So they're attacked by several random creatures. It really just kind of shows the immersive world that was built here. Like all these creatures, there's not one scene in this movie that looks natural in today's world. It looks completely, every inch of the set was unique. Every life form, every background creature. I mean, everything here was just something you had never seen before. We talked about the Garthins, these giant bugs. They were actually designed after some of the people had a lobster dinner one night after shooting.
See it.
And
Yeah.
they saw how the shells of the lobster articulated within each other, and that's how these things were born, which I thought was funny. I also really like the land striders here. Okay, I thought those are really cool. You've seen that design in just about 50 or 60 video games, and we'll kind of get to some of that inspiration here later. But all these unique creatures and all this stuff is just amazing. So Jen and Kira are making their way back to the castle. They're trying to stay one step ahead of the Chamberlain, which is the evil Skeksis that's chasing them, trying to get back into their society. He ends up capturing Kira to steal her essence.
Skeksis had lived 1,000 years or so, and they were waiting for this great conjunction. Agra, when we see her, had all the planets and stuff circling around in her place, and talking about all the suns lining up and planets and this and that. And this is where the Skeksis, if the crystal wasn't repaired, would control the Thra, I guess, forever.
Yeah.
And it would stay evil. And so the big issue is that there was this kind of battle between people wanting to take over for the emperor who had just died.
Yeah.
And the Chamberlain is, when you said he lost and got sent out. It's not excommunicated.
Yeah.
And so he was sent off, and so he's trying to get back into the group, like you were saying. But they also show how the Skeksis have managed to live so long, and that's stealing the essence, which essentially I thought was kind of like the life force, soul force of these creatures. And they were using the dark crystal to suck it out of them. So anyway, so that's how that all happens. And then the Gelflings, of course, there's none left because they were all killed with their life forces all sucked out because they had a much stronger life force that the Skeksis could live off of.
I'm so glad I had another fellow nerd to help articulate these things. It's such a great. Mike would have never got that out, and I would have never either. So thank you so much for that. But it kind of reinforces the point that these Skeksis have just usurped the planet. It kind of identifies them as just users and taking over and just ruining things, and just for their never-ending, urge for power, and they'll do it at any cost. So it kind of reinforces that kind of trope that we all kind of appreciate. So the third act kind of finishes up with, there's this big final battle where all the parties come together. There's this big battle in the chamber of the dark crystal where the dark crystal's kept. Long story longer, Jen ends up slamming the shard into the crystal after some fighting and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of interesting how they made that actor kind of jump and land on that thing and slam the crystal in as a nice little conclusion there. That kind of reunites the Dark Crystal, and it causes the Skeksis and the Mystics to converge back in the Urskeks, which were the original owners of the planet in the original opening scene. It kind of puts things, the universe, right back in balance, which is kind of the narrative, the point of the film, to find that balance in the world. They become these like astral figures that leave the universe at that point and just leave the planet, the healed planet, back to the survivors, and that's kind of your movie. It's kind of a happily ever after thing. But it kind of left the viewer that it kind of embraced this story, wanting a little bit more. They just kind of, everything got wrapped up, of course, but it's like, now what? Now what's left to do? And it's one of those things where just kind of left it open for a sequel, and we'll kind of get to that here when we talk about the merits of the film. So that was probably the most unfortunate review of this very complex plot I've ever given for a podcast. But I mean, words really don't do it a whole lot of credit. It's one of those, you have to be there. You have to see this for yourself to kind of understand how heavily geared this is toward the visual part of this medium and how wonderful it was. So let's kind of talk about that here in a minute. So let's talk about awards and accolades before we do there. So this had a $5 million opening. Given the competition for that month, that's not too bad. Again, this is $1982, where that's a pretty healthy opening. And you got to remember that films like this don't get openings like they do now, where they don't open in 3,500 theaters across the country, right? So you won't see. They didn't have multiplexes, they didn't have multi-theaters like that. So this is probably one theater at a time, very slow, kind of grassroots development. To the point where it actually ended up doing $41 million domestically and another $45 million worldwide. So on a $15 million budget, you can see where this film was by no means a failure. This had the highest ever box office in Japan at the time in 1983. This was released in Japan. And I could see that. I could see the Japanese film public really embracing a film like this. This reads like a lot of classic Japanese stories as well. So I can see that, and their appreciation for this type of art and these themes. I could see how that would really work. Got nominated for some BAFTAs for special effects, but it lost to Return of the Jedi. Henson and Oz were adamant about not having a sequel. They felt that they had said what they wanted to say. There have been several attempts to reboot this in recent years, and it's been very difficult to get the financing and all that kind of thing together to do that. But people are still working on it. It has had some proliferation through, as Dr. K mentioned earlier, they had a sequel on Netflix in 2019 called Dark Crystal: Age of Resistance. This is a prequel to the story. Unfortunately, it only lasted one season, despite getting critical and commercial success. I've often wondered what Netflix uses as an indicator to cancel a show. This is not the first time that's come up where Netflix has canceled a much beloved series for no other reason other than they don't want to tell you why.
So can I soapbox for just a second on that?
That's why we brought you in.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things, and as a stressor for me, you talked about a subtle stressor, just humorous, but like when you're talking about the Japanese, they like the twists and the darkness in their character development, and it makes for great stories. And when you think about like the old fairy tales, when you go back to Grimm's stuff, if you can read them, it's like, wait a second, this kid was bad and then got stomped by a giant, things like that, where it's like, you're telling your kids now that's not the case.
Yeah.
But my real soapbox is to say that when you look at Netflix and you get invested and then something gets canceled, I don't personally think like that kind of closure is terrible, because you don't get it, and like somebody's like, oh, great series, great development, and you're like in, and then sometimes it just gets cut and you don't see anymore. Sometimes the writing just becomes so bad.
Yeah.
And I think with Netflix, the biggest thing is it's not pay-per-view, it's pay to subscribe.
Yeah.
And so, they get a new thing going, people are watching it, they're getting whatever feedback because they can see what people are watching. And if there's something else that's pulling the viewers, they only have so much, that they're going to stream. So I think that's how it happens. But nowadays, for me, my daughter watches a lot of anime. I watch a fair amount. and those kind of things. But a lot of the animation, especially coming out of Japan, they will have the manga, the comic version first, and a lot of times that arc will be over. And the Japanese don't have a tendency to reboot stuff in that way. Now, I can talk about other stuff, but in that way. So when the manga is done, then a lot of times when they animate it, especially with Japanese studios doing it, they will follow the whole thing. So like it's going to have a beginning and an end. And it probably will be pretty close to the story, but at least there's completion. It's the best example for you and I getting that last 13 episodes or so of the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
When I heard it, I was really excited. When I watched it, I was like, the Clone Wars, hands down, it's got to be the best writing of any Star Wars stuff, beginning and end. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
But it's so good. But that closure and how well it was written, it was just so emotionally overwhelming to have that.
Yeah.
And so I think that the various groups, it's just not right to start that stuff and me get invested and waste my time. So that's my soapbox. It sucks when they do it. Period.
I
grumpy.
They're not one of us. I appreciate that because I've had the same way. I mean, how many times have you watched a show? You become emotionally invested. You pay to watch a show. With important disclaimer there, and they burn you. They leave you hanging. So I got to the point now where I actually kind of filter what I watch, and so I'll do research on something before I sit down and watch it to see. Like Reacher on Amazon is a great example. So I like that show. It's take your brain off, enjoy stuff. But I know that each story arc is derived from one of the author's books. So I know that in 8 episodes, they're going to have a middle, and they're going to have an ending. So if Amazon decides to say, okay, you know what, we're not going to do it anymore. It's too expensive for us to make good content, which is code. That's what that's code for. Then I know that at least that story that I will watch will be over. And but I've been burned so many times, especially on traditional like network television. This is notorious for this. Can you imagine if like Lost, people?
Oh gosh!
If they just stopped Lost after season 3 and just let people. I mean, people do that all the time. Networks, they haven't figured it out. But I think we've digressed long enough. Let's get back to the Dark Crystal. So. There's been a couple of comic book novelizations as well. Marvel did a 2-series novelization of the film, which is to great very well done. It inspired other films, not only through the Henson Creature Shop, which include like Labyrinth, which had David Bowie. That ended up being a bomb, and we'll get to that one someday as well. Critics and especially people that would become creatives like Stan Winston, Peter Jackson, they all credit this film motivating them to create film and to use that art style. And I mean, this is like one of the greatest cult films of all time as a result of that. But the people that make these types of films all credit this film as their inspiration. So I don't know if you're a fan of the sci-fi series Farscape, but the Skeksis were actually repurposed. There's a series arc that includes some of the characters engaging with some Skeksis that were the original design, but they've kind of got repurposed in that series Farscape. The critics were not very kind to this. I think it's currently sitting at about a 70% review on Rotten Tomatoes. If you've used that sort of thing, I usually don't. Critics at the time had an issue with it, kind of understanding where it fit in. That most of them felt that it was kind of too eerie for kids. It's probably too odd for adults. So it was kind of in that, a lot of films like this kind of live in that little zone here where we're not entirely sure how to classify it, and people didn't really even know how to critique it. But there you go. He also produced a 1983 PC game, which is one of the first kind of adaptations from it. It was one of those very simple graphic games where you just typed in commands. But this is a legendary game that a lot of people really enjoyed. And like I said, it also inspired these creatives to create new films. So like the film Willow and Clash of the Titans and Princess Bride, who Dr. K helped us. He chimed in on that one a few years ago. I think that was one of his first. But all those films can be a direct result of this film's inspiration. So there you go. So let's get to the important part. All that stuff is prologue to what the important part here is what your hosts really feel about the movie. This is where we call our Grumpy Meter. Grumpy Meter, and this is where we talk about it's kind of the premise of the podcast, where we take films that we watched in our formative years as film fans, and we we kind of reflect back on our first view, and then we review them again as grumpy old jerks and decide how our opinions change one way or the other. So, Dr. K, you're the guest. I'm going to let you go first. Talk about the first time you saw this, and then your observations then, if you can recall, and then talk about your most recent watch and what kind of things changed, and then what was your total take on the film, having done that exercise. So go ahead.
So, because of the Dungeons and Dragons history for me, I know that when I went to see this movie, and I know I saw it when it came out, but I don't remember exactly the timeline. I just know that I did see it in the theater, but I know with all of us having watched the Muppet Show and those kind of things, you would have been thinking, "Oh, I'm going to get something like that," and it was not. It's dark. It's a complete story. And it's just so visually crazy. But we were starting to get movies like that. You were starting to see. Obviously, Star Wars had come out in '77, so we're starting to get really robust, amazing stories.
Yeah.
So
which are reworks of old Japanese stories, but let's keep going.
Yeah. No, I know it, and so I really enjoyed it, and probably the processing of it would have come later because I would have had to have seen it several times on TV. But I always it's on, I'll watch it, that kind of thing. But to rewatch it again recently and look at it and not watch it the same way, I didn't have those expectations. I was watching it as like, oh, well, let's really take a look at this, and it was pretty amazing. I can't all the different artistry of the environments was just dumbfounding, and the movement of the characters, the layers of the characters, just each set, the visualization, just amazing. And yes, I watched it again in last week, so
yeah,
that's where I stand with that. Visually amazing, story amazing for the time. I would say this kind of story is probably been covered again in some sense. A lot of times where they show, like the one Skeksis gets cut and then the mystic is cut, or Skeksis dies and the mystic disappears. A lot of that stuff I think has been redone. I didn't really delve into which movies, but I know there's some parallels there. 3 to 3.5 for me first time.
Yeah.
Just kind of didn't know what was going on. Closer to 4 second time, just because of just how robust everything was. But the only other thing I thought was interesting too, what I would mention was, if I were to have made that film, I would have given equal screen time to the Skeksis and the Mystics to give evil and good a balance. But I think we like more evil in our films because I think there was more Skeksis and entertaining there.
So I'm kind of the same way. I fell into the same trap when I was 12 years old and I saw this for the first time. I think it was an HBO watch for me. This is one of those things that was in the HBO algorithm that they played a lot. When we first got our subscription, we were kind of viewed in, given the amount of media we had to kind of peruse back then, especially at home. So it had this repeated viewing syndrome that I had. I just kind of watched this over and over and over again. But even though I had all that at my disposal, I still kind of associated this with like the Muppets, and it wasn't fun or funny or cute and charming like the Muppet Show was. It was very dark, and it probably made me a little scared and a little unnerved at the time. I thought the puppets were really cool, but it was more of a monster movie to a 12-year-old Justin, and I don't think I really liked it a lot. It was something I would watch because it was on, but it was one of those things where, looking back at it as a 55-year-old guy, looking back when I was watching this 12, I remember I felt a certain way about it, and it's hard to even quantify what that was, but I remember the way I felt when I watched it. Unnerved, a little scared, a little hesitant, a little confused, but still kind of intrigued. But I was too immature and too underdeveloped as a film fan to know what any of that kind of stuff meant. So I had not watched this film since I think when I moved out of the house or whatever, when it stopped being on HBO, I stopped watching it basically. So it had been a good 35 years since I've seen this. And I watched it last week, on very early in the morning on the big screen, and I'm watching it, and the first thing I noticed was the pace. The pace was it's a slow burn for sure. I noticed that not having the CGI is appreciated, but you feel that difference in some sort of way. And right now, it just doesn't. It seems very, very foreign to see this type of art and this type of film being presented to you without the benefit of computers now. And I'll get to kind of that as we progress here. But the story, like I said, the story seems a little derivative of the prophecy proclaims that this will happen. This is basic, hero's journey type thing. The Luke Skywalker farm boy who's predestined to be a hero and to put the world right. I mean, that's been used a lot. But again, 1982 audiences, I don't know if we're looking at that, but I did notice things that I didn't notice as a 12-year-old in this film. Things like our balance with nature and the duality of our personalities and how human beings are split into two types of Skeksis and mystics. We all have that in us, and this never-ending struggle to put the world right. So I find balance in peace and all that. And our communion with nature and all those things kind of hit me now more that a little more evolved, and I see what they did there. So I did appreciate more on that level. It's not something I'm going to watch all the time. It's had a similar movie that had this kind of vibe to me was like Time Bandits. Kind of made the same time era, same type of year. If you remember, me and the other Mike could not figure the takeaway from that movie was we couldn't figure out who the audience was there because it was kind of, again, it was too weird for kids, but it was too childish and odd for adults. It kind of fell in this weird little niche, and I felt there's a lot of carryover, a lot of commonality between that film and this film, and that's kind of where it stands. So I don't think I went up or down on my appreciation for the film. Probably 3 out of 5 on both aspects, both eras. But one of the things that my biggest takeaway from this on my most recent watch was, I mentioned a little bit before, every single element, molecule of this, every frame of this film has something that's completely made, completely structured, completely handmade. And the buzzword they like to use now is world building. But what it really is just developing an immersive community through good writing, good visuals, that just puts you in a world where for 90 minutes you're not thinking about anything else in your life. You're not thinking about your bills or your mortgage or politics or your job. You're thinking about what's happening in Thra for 30 minutes because the film has this encased you. That type of world building is something that's very unique, and not a lot of films kind of pull it off. So we thought for this week's installment of You Just Made the List, Pal, we take a look at some other films that shine at doing this, that really deliver this like world building experience where for the time you sit in that dark room, you are encased, you are enveloped in this world, and they're not going to let you go. So, Kay, why don't we talk about 2 or 3, maybe a handful of honorable mentions if we have. Let's talk about our top 3 favorite world building, in quotes, movies that aren't Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, because those are too good and those are too easy. So let's challenge ourselves. So head us off.
I'm going to start with this. You're talking childhood, what does world building mean? Of course, to this generation, Minecraft would be right on the list. I didn't even see it, but that's world building. But mine is
literally.
So I'm going to go with my world building is kaiju stuff. And what I mean by that is King Kong, US, came out in 1933. Godzilla, Japanese, came out in 1954. Godzilla versus King Kong came out in 1962. And then Gamera, one of my favorites, is a Japanese flying turtle with such, came out in 1965. All of those movies were based on a premise of things going on in the time period. The Japanese were coping with, the nuclear bomb and such, atomic bomb, and the destruction and just the commentary on it. But then to create all of that, and then U.S., we had King Kong earlier, and that's a crazy story by itself, as far as the history associated with King Kong and the time period, 1933. So a little bit after the stock market crash, another world war in the mix. Well, first World War, I guess. So anyway, you move forward, and one of my favorite films in that genre is Pacific Rim, which came out in 2013, which combines kaiju, so your monsters, with giant-sized robots. So it's like a win for me. And then I didn't even see it, but Anne Hathaway was in a film called Colossus in 2016, which was an interesting commentary and a change with kaiju mirroring a behavior of a human being. But anyway, so I'm going to say my world building is just the world building of the kaiju to bring it forward from then into now. I mean, I get excited about those things. So that's my first.
Very cool. Yeah, I agree. Those are interesting because I grew up on those films, and they were always smart enough to put a kid in the story, so you could always relate to them. And I think that's what made them so formative to me. Is like I felt like I was part of the story in some way because there was a representative kid there that was always put in danger and always befriended the monster and all that kind of thing. So I thought that was always really great. So my number 3 pick to start me off is a little more commercial. I'm going to go with Blade Runner from 1982. If you look back at this film, which we covered a hell of a long time ago, but what I like most about this film is that, Douglas Trumbull, who did all the special effects, and Ridley Scott, who was just at the top of his game. I think this is his masterpiece by far. Every scene in that movie, every detail, the way it's the cinematography, the way it's lit, every prop in the background. I mean, there's nothing that feels out of place. It feels like it's completely crafted. The dingy element, the rain, this dystopian place that 2019, of course, was it 2019? It's this world that they created for this film that just completely, every scene has just got this like tapestry woven around it, where everything in the background is even more cool. It's even to watch. So without gushing too much, I think that's my first one from 1982, Blade Runner.
The nice thing about, I totally agree about Blade Runner. It's amazing. It's one of the neat things about it is, and even as the Star Wars have been improved over time, when you're looking at it, you're not stuck with just what's going on in the foreground of the story. There's other things that are going on. It's like a living environment, and that makes it amazing. A lot of animation that I watch, it's only the foreground stuff. Like a lot of the stuff is, so we're moving like this in this picture right now, but the person in the background hasn't moved ever, standing on the sidewalk. So anyway, I think that's a great choice.
All right. So we got your second pick. Okay.
All right. So I'm going to go with 1986's The Transformers, the movie. And a couple of funny reasons. One, your world building is Cybertron, of course. The fact that, you have these, obviously, the good guys and the bad guys developing in there. And their time period that they were talking about was 2005. I mean, that was when Cybertron and all these wars and the rise of the Decepticons and all that such was supposed to be going on. But the fact that, obviously these are toys, commercial toys and stuff that, and one of the funniest comments I read was, as far as extended commercials go, it's a hit. but it was just really neat. There's some really cool voice actors that go through this, so Judd Nelson.
I got a question. Does Barry Manilow know that you raid his wardrobe?
Give you the answer to that question, Mr. Bender, next Saturday.
Was in there, which was funny, but at the same time, Orson Welles is Unicron, which is the major bad guy in there, and I think
that's crazy.
I think they're rebooting this. Maybe Michael Bay's coming back to do one. I think Unicron is coming into that. I think that's coming out in the next 2 years. So it's just to see it go from the animation and the toys, which were metal back then, by the way, to come forward to when the CGI and the development came in, and then more lore. I think that's a big part of world building is, the lore. You get hungry for that kind of stuff. Like, well, what's the story of this person? And boy, they provide a lot of it with the Transformers. So I've enjoyed the newer films, although sometimes they're visually too fast. Like the CGI, it's hard to take it all in. But all that being said, that's my second.
That's a very good pick. An animated film that can create a world building. That's pretty cool. So my second pick is going to be even more commercial. I'm going to talk about Dune, the remakes from the first one could be thrown in here too, but I'm going to go with the most recent ones from part 1 in 21 and part 2 in 2023. I just watched these films, so they're probably a little biased. I was kind of marathon these this weekend actually. Didn't think there'd be a tie into this list, but I think it ultimately kind of trumped it. But I read these books and I've created a world in my brain already, in my imagination, 15, 20 years ago. And I watched the 1984 version and it veered a little bit. It was an interpretation of it, but for some reason, these most recent films kind of captured what I put in my brain back when I was 14 years old, trying to understand this plot the first time I read it. But the sets, of course, the landscapes and the places they shot and the environments they created here, a completely foreign world built of natural things that we see are occurring here on Earth, but just skewed enough to make it look slightly unreal. It's just a testament to Denis Villeneuve, who's the director that just saw this vision all the way through. But I think we got to talk about the set designer here was a guy named Patrice Bermet, who just really just created this, again, just this encompassing world where, again, things in the background, all of the detail, the landscapes, the cinematography, that all plays well. And I think something we haven't talked about yet that really helps sell this world building is the score. I think Hans Zimmer did the music for a lot of films we like to make fun of, especially in the 90s. But he did the score for Dune as well. And there's that, that indigenous people chanting song thing that everybody can associate with this, the tribal sounds, the Arabic sounds, the combination of like all these different types of faith that kind of parallel Hinduism and Muslim overtones and Islamic overtones, and just coupled with the Lawrence of Arabia type scale of it.
Oh yeah.
And the things that just really puts you in this world of Arrakis, where you just feel like you're there, and you actually start heating up. You actually feel heat from that desert, sitting and watching it on the screen. So that's my second pick, Dune from 21 and 23.
Oh, great! And those books were fabulous, and it's amazing when you read books like that, Lord of the Rings, any of those, and your imagination is doing something, and to think somebody can create it where you can watch it and
yeah.
Agree with a lot of it, and if you don't agree with a lot of it, then it doesn't fly. But some of the stuff is just so amazing.
No, I agree. All right, so we're down to our final pick. So
final pick is going to be this. So I'm guessing it's some of the things that you were going to pick, but I'm laughing. So I'm going to go Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, 1990, and I'm laughing about this because I didn't really care about the Ninja Turtles, other than we knew they were there. We knew Shredder was the bad guy, the foot or the hand or whatever. That were the group that was running the underground, and you have all of these four turtles that somehow radioactive ooze and develop into these teenage mutant kids. I mean, it's such a mind-boggling
as the title
story.
implies. Yeah.
And so the thing is, there's so much randomness with how this came together. Like if you listen to how the artists developed the idea for the comic books and then made this thing, it's crazy. But what's funny is my daughter, who is about to turn 13, so last year or a couple years ago, was watching Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, I think, came into the theater. So it was animated, but not like the one I just talked about in 1990. They were in costumes, if I remember correctly. Whereas in this one, it was all animated. But the animation and the story were fantastic. And so it goes back to like, okay, this is a really bizarre idea, but if the writing is good, if the story is there, like Pixar hung their hat on it for years, with all their animation and such, then it's amazing. And that 2023 version was terrific, but it's not, when you go back to 1990 or you're watching any of this, and you're like, oh, Vanilla Ice is going to have a song in probably the third movie, and just stuff like that. You're like, wow, this is crazy. But you start thinking about, okay, the Turtles, they're in New York City, they're eating pizza. Like everybody knows, they know their names. Some people don't even realize they're named after artists. I mean, it's just all this funny stuff that is mixed into this to make this. And then you come all the way forward, and you may not know this, but there is a story that was written called The Last Ronin, which you would not think was anything about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but it's about a future state where the turtles die. And I'll ruin it for you because I haven't read it, but I'm going to go read it. This comic series came out from 2020 to 2022, and Michelangelo is the only one that's left. Donatello, all the others get killed. And there's a whole storyline behind all that. And the reviews of it are phenomenal, to the point where there is either a movie or a series that's going to be in the works relative to that. Very dark Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and thinking that any of them would be dead.
Yeah.
But they're coping with loss, vengeance. I mean, it's a story. And so it sounds crazy, but, I'm going to go back to that. I didn't love it then, but I really like what they've done with it.
That's why I'm so glad to have you, because that last epilogue would never been echoed by the other Mike. Never would have got that. I think you subconsciously just kind of brought us back around because that was the last project that Jim Henson did. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle costumes were a Henson Creature Workshop thing, his last project. So while he was still alive.
Fantastic.
There you go. Cool. So my last pick here is going to be probably the most commercial one of all of them. But I've got a couple of honorable mentions here. I think the Mad Max movies have always been interesting.
Oh, yeah, that was
great. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say that. I was almost banking on it. Okay.
Let me see if I can ruin some more of your day. So I think the other one is The Nightmare Before Christmas by Tim Burton. Tim Burton could be in this list as well. He has a very good way of kind of making these whole worlds in his own little creative genius way. I think Pan's Labyrinth could get thrown in the conversation, but I'm going to go with the biggest one of all time. I'm going to go with Avatar, and I'll tell you why.
Oh.
There's the obvious reason that it's a 3D generated world that never been done before and broke all kinds of records. I think 2 of the top 3 films of all time are Avatar and the second one. I think they're there for a reason. These films catch a lot of grief from modern audiences now. Same audiences that went and gave them billions of dollars worth of box office claim these movies aren't any good. So I've never quite understood why. I think it's all a lot to do with James Cameron's vision. Yes, the stories are derivative, but what stories aren't? I mean, the people that claim about the plot of these movies being simple are the same people that will see the same Marvel superhero plot 17 times in a row and not realize that it's just an origin story on both villains, and they accelerated third act to close the film to create a sequel. I mean, these are the same people that complain. Avatar is an amazing film, and because it is entirely rendered. That world does not exist. It exists in James Cameron's imagination and his creative teams, and they willed this film to screen. They created technology that didn't exist to film something that you had never seen before. It is the only commercial property that is not a remake or an adaptation. It is a completely new content, which doesn't exist anymore. So I don't want to hear people complaining about these movies not being good. I just don't want to hear it. That argument is weak, and it's over. So having said that, I did watch Avatar: Way of the Water last night for 3 hours straight in a row on a 90-inch screen in the middle of the night, pitch black, and I was completely immersed by it. One, because of the groundbreaking special effects, obviously, but this is one of those films where I don't want to see how it was made. I don't want to see how the sausage was made in this film, because for 3 hours last night, I forgot where I was. I wasn't on Earth. I was in Pandora. And the water and the spray and the threads of their dreadlocks, and it's all rendered. It's not real. But yet, I didn't think about any of that. I thought about this environment. I thought about these characters, and I realized in the middle of it that I am watching a computer rendering of something. And you're going to love this, Kate, because it's right up your alley. I've been doing some research lately about, the premise of our show is that films aren't like they used to be, and what's the problem? What's the difference? And I came across a YouTube video that this guy, a very clever guy, did. I forget to give him credit now, but I'll bring it up at some point, I'm sure. But he did a whole thing about the phenomena of optics versus haptics.
Oh, yeah.
For those that aren't familiar, the reason movies don't look like they used to look like, the 70 millimeter Technicolor films like Giant and movies like that, or Bye Bye Birdie, or all those things that were shot in the Lawrence Arabia, things that were shot 60, 70 years ago that look like they're modern day, because they were shot in this optic format. And films now, with the predominance of CGI and all that kind of thing, more rely on a phenomenon called haptics, which even your iPhone has a setting for haptics. Haptics is kind of defined as artificial stuff designed to make you feel a certain way, to create this artificial environment. So if you look at something like the most recent Jurassic Park movie, lined up, split screen against the original Jurassic Park movie, they look very different. The new Jurassic Park, this haptic-driven one, is CGI rendered, and it doesn't look real. I know it sounds like a contradiction talking about Avatar, but there's this phenomenon that makers have had now that you don't even notice it, where they use CGI to make you to trick you into think you're feeling something real, but there's always something off. You can always tell a CGI rendered screen, as good as they are, but it doesn't feel right. And that, I think that's got a lot to do with this haptics versus optics argument. But I think the world that Avatar created is just one of those where it pushes through that. And of course, there's not a world where this exists, but they do their best with the technology they have and to put you in there. And it's just one of those things that I really appreciate even more. And I'm looking forward to seeing the next one. And I say that unabashedly and unapologetically. And I can't wait to go see these movies because as a film fan, it is film at its purest level. They're creating this world that you've never seen before to tell you a story you may have heard, but in a different way, with things you have literally never envisioned before. And if that's not good enough for you, read a book. Stop going to movies. So that's my soapbox for this episode. So there you go.
So I agree with you. What's interesting is I fought myself to try to go with anything too recent. And it was interesting. I was banking. You were either going to say Alien. So I was like, for this, I was thinking maybe he'll pull Planet of the Apes out.
That's a good one.
Never
Never thought of that
fan.
one.
I thought you were going to be in that list as far as something goes.
I feel shame.
I fought myself to. I felt that Harry Potter and all of those films as a world building, but to me that was also too big. I felt that was already in the Star Wars and Lord of the Rings build. But you're talking a point where you believe everything. The characters are in there. I could soapbox on it because I'm a little mad. They did their Fantastic Creatures or whatever that was, and then that series is dead, I think, because of Rowling and her opinions. but so I liked where that was going and how the intermix they had on that. But I would just say I agree with you. I mean, I think it's amazing when you look at just the build of things that can be made and how robust and how fun and how you get immersed. It's so exciting. Yeah. And then beyond that, the thing for me, I think, with the CGI is the depth of field is, I think, what I see the most. Yeah. When you look at Lawrence of Arabia or something like that, I mean, it just feels right. Whereas a lot of times when you look at that generated foreground and background, I don't know how to describe it, but it just feels digital. So. Yeah, I think CGI, we've talked about this a few times, so I won't get into much detail, but I think CGI is a blessing and a curse. I think it's just another tool that creatives can use in their toolbox that can go bad just like anything else. Overdeveloping characters, putting too much in your film, lighting, bad casting. These are all just things that can make a film go south. So you can have an Avatar, but you can also have, a Scorpion King, or, you can have, if you don't use it well, if you're not creative, it's the AI argument. AI can never write a movie, but you can ask AI to write prompts that give you an idea how to form an outline. So it's one of those things we're going to have to figure out as a species how we want to deal with these kind of things, especially as in the film community. Do we want to embrace these kind of things? But at the end of the day, we're still going to have to worry about how we're creative. And there is no artificial creativity. It is one of those things where maybe in 50 years we're going to have a different conversation. But, AI cannot make you a creative person. It can guide you. It can show you the roadmap to be there. But you're still going to have to make this. A human being is going to have to make these calls. And I think that's ultimately the saving grace for the future of film, is that people still have to make these things. And the first completely AI generated film is not going to be good. I'll tell you that right now. It's just not going to be good because it is only derived from previous events, and therefore it is not creative. That's how AI works. So we've kind of got off the rails here a little bit, but to put the guardrails back on, I think CGI is a good thing. And if it's used right, it can create these environments that just, again, can make you forget about your problems. And that's really all. That escapism is what makes me a movie fan now, and did back then when I had nothing to escape from. So, I mean, that's kind of how it goes. So, well,
Kay, we have gone a very, very long time, which I do not care because we had a great conversation, but we should probably wrap this up at some point. So if you're interested in finding out more about our show, you can check us out on our Instagram page. That's at Grumpy Nostalgia. You can check out our YouTube channel. Maybe you'll be the one. Who knows? You can also check out our website at grumpynostalgia.buzzsprout.com. At said website, you'll find all of our shows archived neatly and in order. You can check us out. You can also check out more information about me and the other Mike. And we hope to have another panel here shortly that will talk about little contributions from all of our guest contributors. So we're hoping to get that going soon. So, Dr. K, it's been a pleasure having you. Thank you so much again for filling in on short notice. Super sub came through and delivered a hell of an episode. I appreciate you coming in.
Justin, no problem. It was a lot of fun.
All right. So that's going to kind of wrap it up for this week's show. This is typically where I say it. Mike, do you have anything else to say before we head out here?
Supposed to have some clever phrase right here. I just want some pizza, man.
The sovereignty of Mike's catchphrase, keep it pure. So we're going to wrap it up. So thank you for listening. So for Dr. K, this is Justin. We will see you again next time.
It's so stupid.